All right. Good morning, again. We have lots to talk about over here in this sugya. We're going to talk today about Sif Aleph and Sif Beis in Kufa and Ches. So the Beis Yosef, but before we get to the Beis Yosef, just to summarize quickly, in the sugya, the machlokas, Chisda, and Resheshis of whether or not we consider pas to be dvar metuna bracha lachreim and koimam. Therefore, there's no hefsek if you leave in the middle of the suda and come back, even if you're by yourself. The Chisda holds there's no hefsek, and Resheshis holds there is hefsek. And the Gemara brings a raya from the Brisa that were yotze l'chos and l'chos kala, that there's a stipulation that you need hinichu chola v'zaken in order for it to not have to make a new bracha when you come back. At least the way some Rishonim learn that according to that brisa, according to the Resheshis, if you come back, if you didn't make a bracha when you left, even though you're mechuyev to, when you come back, you have to make a new bracha benching when you get back, and then you have to make a new bracha rishonim, and that's the task of Resheshis, is to bring a raya to him. So the question is, are we docha that raya? And we say it's only Rabbi Yehuda, or are we mekabel that raya? So that was, we saw as a major machlokas between the Rif and the Rambam on one side, that we mekabel the raya against Rav Chisda, and therefore the halacha is like Resheshis, that even by pas, even by dvarim atun bracha lachreim koman, still we say that if you didn't leave mixas chaverim there, because we know we're talking about dvarim atun bracha lachreim koman because it says akru, lashon akru, Dayak, that you're only considered an akira of the suda if we're talking about dvarim atun bracha lachreim koman. You're in mamish in the middle of that suda, you're mechuyev to stay there and bench there. So if you okay yourself and you don't do it, so then we're paskening like Resheshis according to the Rif that when you come back, since you're over the Dakana and you're okay the Suda, then you need a new benching and a new bracha rishona. It's considered a new Suda at this point. And I was trying to get in. That's the shita of Resheshis, and that's the shita of the Rif and the Rambam, which is also the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. That we're paskening like those shitas that we actually Kaimalon Resheshis, and even by pas, if you leave without hinichu mixas chaverim or mixas achol v'zaken, then you need a bench and you need to make a new bracha when you come back. That's the shita of the Shulchan Aruch, like the Rif and the Rambam. However, the shita of Tosas and the Rashbam is to paskin like Rav Chisda, that we're not makabel that tchia. We say that it's only a that raya from the Brisa is only going according to Rabbi Yehuda, and halacha kaimalon like Rav Chisda, that dvar metuna bracha lachreim v'koman, you're considered in the middle of the suda, like the Rush says, you're still you're still back in your place, because since you're required to come back to that place, it's like you never left that place, and therefore the halacha. You would not need, if you come back, if you weren't makayim the takana or the strong suggestion or the recommendation to bench before you leave, then when you come back, you don't have to bench, and you don't need a new bracha rishona either, because you're still in the middle of the suda, and that's the psak of the Ramah. So this machlokas we have all the way down the line, Rav Chisda and Resheshis, and we have the Tosas and the Rashbam on one side, we have the Rif and the Rambam on the other side, and then it comes down to machlokas, the Shulchan Aruch, like the Resheshis, and the Ramah, like Rav Chisda, and the Mishnah Berurah in its Hakdama. So it's good. I just actually see that Hakdama, the Mishnah Berurah before the Simon, summarizes the whole sugya. Says that certainly Kamal on the Dinah, like the Ramah, like Rav Chisda. So we're going to speak a little bit more now. I think there's one. It seems to be like an incidental question. Sometimes these incidental questions can be a mafteach to understanding the depth of the whole sugya. So the Beis Yosef is machadesh that according to Rav Chisda, he says it doesn't help to have hinichu mixas chaverim by dvarim she'ein tunu bracha lachreim v'koman. This question, this stipulation that we have the kuli alma, there's no machlokas Rav Chisda and Rav Resheshis when hinichu chola v'zaken or hinichu mixas chaverim. In all those cases, everyone agrees that you do not need to bench when you leave, and when you come back, you don't need a new bracha. So the question is, where does it help to have hinichu mixas chaverim? So Beis Yosef says the davar pashut that it's for sure it doesn't help to leave chaverim if you're eating, let's say, peris, or eating things that low dvarim she'ein tuna bracha l'chaverim kaman. So the lashon of the Beis Yosef was near the beginning of the simon says that the kaven a davar she'ein lo kevahu, since you're eating a thing that doesn't have a keva, ki nichu sham zaken achola my havi. What did you do? You didn't do anything. In other words, the Beis Yosef's understanding that there's that he's, even according to Rav Chisda, the time that it helps the whole concept of hinichu is only going to be by something which has a kviyus to it to begin with. And now you might have a question whether you're being oker that kviyus when you leave. So the mixes chavera makes it that you're not oker the kviyus. So that's the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef himself, a little later on in the sermon, I'm sure you saw, says in the name of the Smak, the Sefer Mitzvahs Aktanas, the Smak, that it does help mixes chaverim by dvarim she'ein tuna bracha l'chaverim kaman, by anything. Beis Yosef has a doubt about exactly what's the pshat in the words of the Smak. He has a problem with it, but the pashtus lashon of Smak is that even by peros, it helps to have hinichu chaverim. So I have to understand this machlokas, and I think by understanding this machlokas, we're going to get really to the depth of the whole sugya over here, whether it helps by dvarim she'ein tuna or not. So I think we have to clear an essential chakira, and this that it helps to leave mixes chaverim is a pshat that since even though you left, but some people didn't leave, so the suda that you were in, it's considered as if the suda is still kayemes. The suda is still in vogue, it's still in place. Generally speaking, if you get up and you walk away, you're okay the suda. By having chaverim there, it's as if the suda is still kayemes. So it comes out that when you come back to your suda, then we say the kiva hadar. You're going back to the original kriyas because the kriyas was never nekar ayidei since you had chaverim there. Or you could say a different shot. You could say that generally speaking, it's when you leave, when you're nekar and you get up and you walk away. So then mitzad the gavra we have hesach hadas, and when you have chaverim there, hinichu mixas chaverim, then since you left people there, you're never really misiach das from the suda. So the nafkamino between these two studim will be our shaila over here. If shot is that we say that the suda is still kayemes, then we're only going to say that by a suda that has a chalos shem suda, has a shem kviya suda to begin with. Only that we'll say that if you left chaverim, then even though you left, your suda is still kayemes. Then that only has a mashmos, it only has any meaning to it. If we're talking about something that has a shem suda kayemes to begin with. So that's the pshat in the Beis Yosef. In the words of the Beis Yosef, the caveman, the davar she'ein lo kevahu, for eating peros, since it's a davar she'ein lo keva, so keinichu sham mixes chaverim my havi. You left people there. What does it do? Meaning, what it needs to do is it needs to keep the suda kayemes. But if you never had a suda kayemes to begin with, there was never a kfiyah suda because it's dvarim she'ein koban aleim suda by the fact that it's dvarim she'ein tuna bracha l'chaverim koman like peros. You never had a shem kfiyah suda. So then the fact that you left people there, what does it do? It generally makes it the suda's kavua, it still remains kavua. You never had a kavua to begin with, so then it doesn't do anything. That's the Beis Yosef. However, the pshat in the smak that it does help is that since the problem is heschadas and you had and you left people there, so then the fact that you left people there it shows you were not mesiach das. It has nothing to do with the kfiyah suda. It has to do with the fact that you're not mesiach das. So if you left people there, doesn't make enough whether it's pas or it's peris. So of course, if you're not mesiach das by leaving chaverim there, so that's why the smak would hold that it does help, even by peris.
What's the connection between hesach hadas and hinichu sham zaken achola? Meaning, wouldn't an amount of time or a place be more of something that would keep your mind on something? Leaving people there. How does that connect?
Right, you left chaverim there. The fact that you left chaverim, so like you know that you still have what to return. Like there's still like your suit is still going on mitzad not mitzad etzem suda, but mitzad that there are people there. So you're not forgetting about this because you're connected to your chaverim. So it's not that you need that the kfiyah suda is still kavua, but you just need that you aren't misiach das, then you still remain attached to it in some way, even not mitzad the etzem suda, but mitzad the fact that you have chaverim, they're mishtatif in the suda. We'll see that there's going to be some fascinating nafkaminas, and what you're asking, we'll see when we get a little further on. But I first want to go a little. Okay, we're out of batteries. All right. So we'll go. I think we'll go one step deeper first, and then we'll come back to what you're asking. We'll see some really fascinating nafkaminas in the post game. So number one, just to go a little bit deeper, whether or not henichu mixes chaverim works within kfiyah suda or within hesach hadas, that removes hesach hadas, I think that goes to really the crux of the matter of what the akira from the suda does to begin with. If a person, the whole din shinui makom that we're dealing with in this sugya, and essentially we started with kiddush, with shinui makom and kiddush, and then from there we got into shinui makom by kol brachos, and the sugya we're talking about right now. So if we clear a deeper akira in the whole din shinui makom, but to begin with, which we're sort of like, we keep on hedging on this as we're talking about the second, really the din henichu mixes chaverim is a secondary din. We have to go one step earlier, really, to that, is understand what is a din shinui makom to begin with. Is shinui makom to begin with a din in akira suda? If I'm a shana makom, that is considered that I ended the suda, it's an akira suda, or it's not akira suda, it's simply a din in hesach hadas. And every shinui makom, we're not looking at the akira suda. We're looking at the fact that the gabra was mesiach das, whether he likes it or not, even though he says he has das to go back. But your actions are speaking louder than words. The fact that you got up and you walked away, that is a hesach hadas be'etzem, by walking away from your suda. So you could say that gufa is the machlokas Rav Chisda and Rosh Hashis to begin with. That Rosh Hashis holds you need a bracha l'mafreya when you come back, and the chatchila, and a new bracha when you start eating again, even by dvar matuna bracha l'chayav kaman, even if you're eating pas, he holds, since he's saying even by pas, where you have a kfiyah suda, you see al korchach the Rosh Hashis holds that it's an akira suda, that the suda is no longer going on, and the fact that you're mechuyev to go back, the fact that you're mechuyev to go back is the fact that that's not strong enough to be okay. The fact that so you walked away from your suda, and the ma'isa walking away, that's oker the suda that you're in. So therefore, he holds that even by dvar metunim bracha lachrayim koman, since you're oker the etzim suda, then that requires a benching because your suda has ended, because you're oker the suda. It's mamash and akira, so you're oker the suda, and therefore you need to bench, because it's whatever you're going to need after that, by definition, is a new suda. That's what Rosh Hashis holds, and that's the psak of the Rambam, the Rif and the Rambam, and the Shulchan Aruch. But Rav Chisda holds that shinui makom is only within hesach hadas. So since it's only within hesach hadas, then only by dvarim she'en tuna bracha l'makom, you're not required to go back to where you were to begin with, to bench. So then you could say the fact that you walked away, you're mesiach das where you were eating before. Masha'enken, something which you're required to come back, we've been saying all along, that you're mechuyev to come back there, then the chiyuv itself to come back to that place, and to back to the makom suda, that itself ensures that you're not mesiach das. And that's the das of Tosfos and the Rosh and the Ramah. And the Maisa, I think it's mufurish the Ramah like that. And that's the pshat, because the Shulchan Aruch and Sif Aleph and Sif Beis goes through the whole sugya basically according to the das Rif and the Rambam, and therefore he says even by pas everything you have to make a new bracha and bench and everything, unless you're mesiach chaverim. And then the Ramah says in the end of Sif Beis, v'yesh cholkin b'kol ma shekasav b'simin zeh. There are those that are cholok on everything the Shulchan Aruch said up until now. Rak sovrim, and rather they hold Sheshinui mokom eno ela kehesach hadas. He's coming to Afuki the Shulchan Aruch. He seems to understand the Shulchan Aruch is saying there was nekra sudosa, and therefore it's a new suda, and you need all these dinim. You have to bench, you have to make a new bracha, and even by Doran two new bracha like Aram Koman. And yesh cholkin v'sovrim jeshinin makom eno ela hesach hadas. It's not an akira suda. It's only hesach hadas. So that's good with Ramah's Machadish over here to tell us it's only hesach hadas, and therefore the suda is not nekra. So if it's varma tuna bracha like Aram Koman, then you don't need to bench because you're still in the middle of the suda. You weren't not really the siach das. In the worst case, you have to make a bracha rishona. If you were in some case, if you actually were mesiach das, but if not, like in the middle of a suda's pas, then you come back and you don't have to make even a bracha rishona either. You weren't, because the chiyuv to come back created that there was no hesach hadas. So the Ramah seems to be telling us, like we're saying, like our chakira, that gufa is machlokes Rav Chanina, Rav Chisda, and Risheshis, whether the din of shinui mokom is a din akira sasuda or it's a din hesach hadas. So now it's before Shlomo like that, and we're going to see now a lot of nafkaminas and how it's going to explain a lot of things. I'm just going to point out that this seems to be different than we said in the last year. We saw the rush last time, that the rush, so the pshat in Shinui Makom by Dvar Metuna Bracha Lachem Koman that does not need a bracha like right Rav Chisda is since you're mechuyev to go back, it's kilu b'mkomo dami. Kilu, you're still in the same place. So that with my and the rush is on the Ramah side of the equation. So you have to say the fact that he says this lumdus, that's kilu still b'mkomo dami, that's part of the equation over here, why it's not considered hesach hadas. That the chiyuv to go back to the original place, that you keeps you attached to it in a way that you're not mesiach das. Now we explained it last time a little differently. We thought that means that gufa means that it's considered the hemshach of the same suda. Now we're seeing for the Ramah not the way we learned. We're saying that the Ramah is fair saying that the pshat in this whole side of the equation of Rav Chisda and Tosas and the Rush and these Rishonim is that it's midin hesach hadas, not that the suda was never nekar. So it's different than we said last time. I have to be choser a little bit. On the other hand, the Rush still says what he says. So it's only going to work mitzad that the chiyuv to come back makes you like you're still b'mkomo, and that's gufa why you're not mesiach das. That's how we're going to have to put the two together in a little bit different the way that we did last time. We'll see enough community in this as we go along. So now we understand the two stadim over here. That since the whole machlokas Rav Chisda and Risheshis is whether or not pshat and shinui makom is an akira of the suda or it didn't hesach hadas on the gavra, and therefore there's enough kamina if we say even by dvar mituna bracha lachem koman according to Rav Chisda you can be oker it because you're oker the suda even though you're mechuyev to go back you can still be oker that suda, and Risheshis holds not that way because there's no hesach hadas. So since that's the machlokas of the whole din of shinui makom, now it's enough kamina. And the next stage of what does mixas chaverim poil? What does it do? What does it accomplish? What's the uftu? What's the accomplishment of mixas chaverim? If what happens through shinui makom is an akira sasuda, so then what mixas chaverim is going to do is it's going to keep the suda intact. Then the revach of having mixas chaverim is going to be that the suda was not nekar. You're forced to say that because if that's the tikkun for the problem of akira suda, you have to say mixas chaverim keeps the suda intact, keeps the kaviyas suda still be kavua and not be nekar, not be uprooted. If you hold that the whole pshat in shinui makom is that there's hesach hadas, the mixas chaverim keeps it that you weren't mesiach das. Even though we saw the suda, you might have been okay or whatever, but the ma'aseh of chaverim there, so then that keeps your das attached to that place. We saw the gavra. Saw the person that your das is still there. And what the nafkamina then will be? The nafkamina will be whether or not mixes chaverim works for Paris, when there is no kviya suda. The Beis Yosef that's going like Risheshis, like the Rif and the Rambam. It's possible like Risheshis that that there is that the pshat and shidduch makom is a kiras suda, and mixes chaverim is in order to ensure that the suda remains intact. That's only going to work when there is a suda that was intact to begin with, when there was a suda kavua to begin with, because that's what it does. Is it just ensures that there was no akira of the yet a suda chashuva of dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. So then the fact that you walked away does not ochre that suda kavua because you left mixes chaverim there. That's only going to work when there was a suda kavua to begin with. If you only had Paris to begin with, there never was a suda kavua, then the Beis Yosef says, my havi, since it was never a keva to begin with, my havi, what did you accomplish? What did it do? So that's why he holds it doesn't work by Paris. Mashenken, according to the Ramah, according to the svor of the smak is that since shinu makom to begin with works not bidin akiras asuda, so mixas chaverim is not coming to ensure any kviya suda. Mixas chaverim is coming to ensure that the gavra is not mesiach das by the fact that you walked away and you left some people there. So ma'anaf community between Peros and dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. It's a whole different din than dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. It's not totally in that, just totally in the fact that the gavra is not mesiach das. So that's the nukudas hamachlokas between the smak and the Beis Yosef, whether or not, and in turn between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, whether we'll see in the Ramah, whether mixes chaverim works by Paris as well. Now, the halacha l'maisa, the Taz in Sifkat and Aleph, he writes by Riches. The Taz is very chashuv to see that. Anyway, the Taz and the Mishnah Berurah, they talk about the same thing. That there's the machlokas over here is really in two areas. It comes out that if you hold like Rishish, Sheshes or Chisda, so it's a double machlokas. Whether or not we say whether or not akira works by dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. And number two, when you come back, if you need to bench and make a new bracha rishona or not. So that you'll see, I'm sure, in the Hakdam of the Mishnah Berurah and the Taz. But the Maisa in this Nukuda about Paris, the Taz says it's pashit. The halacha is like the Beis Yosef and not like the Smak, because you see, here's the Taz's raya, which I think you could easily argue in this raya, but Lani is tied to you. But the Taz's raya is that the Brisa only mentioned this din of hiniach mitzvos chaverim by the case in the Brisa that said akru. And akru is, we know because of the lashon akru, the Gemara's Medayek, that we're talking about dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. Correct? You follow that? In the case of akru, I'm not hearing you.
The Beis Yosef said that also.
Yeah, he alludes to it. The Taz speaks a lot more about Riches. The fact that it says akru, we know that we're talking about dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman and l'chabal l'chadusho. The Brisa was only machadish the din mixes chaverim by the case where there is akru, which means we're talking about dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. We don't find anywhere a din of mixes chaverim by anything other than dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. So therefore, that's a raya to the Beis Yosef against the smak. That's what the Taz says. And the Taz two more times in the Siman keeps on alluding back to that. So for that reason, the Taz, when it gets to the Ramah, so the Ramah clearly holds not that way. The Ramah, which it says the Makar of the Ramah is the smak, the Ramah clearly says that he says dafka shelo hiniach mixas chaverim besuda v'achal midvarim she'enan tzrichen bracha l'koman. It's only if you didn't leave mixas chaverim and you ate from those things which do not need a bracha l'koman. Avol im hiniach mixas chaverim, but if you left mixas chaverim, afilu lo hiniach v'achal dvarim she'tzrichen bracha l'koman, or even if you didn't leave mixas chaverim, but you ate dvarim she'tzrichen bracha l'koman, then afilu masher rotzel lechal harkach doesn't need a new bracha. So the Ramah is clearly saying that the din mixas chaverim is lafuke, the case where you ate dvar mituna bracha l'chrayim koman. So clearly the Ramah is saying that the din mixes chaverim works even by dvarim she'ein, even by Paris. There's a din mixes chaverim. The Taz in Vav, he has a big problem with, of course, l'shitaso, it can't be, and he already slugged up the smak from the lashon of brisa that doesn't apply at all by dvarim she'ein, so he tries to make a haggah in the lashon of the Ramah. The Ramah doesn't really mean that, but so because he can't be sobel that. But the Magen Avram and Sifkat and Gimel, Magen Avram Sifkat and Gimel is going on the Shulchan Aruch in the beginning of Sif Beis, where it says, where the Shulchan Aruch says, Chaverim Shai Yoshim Lechol V'yatzu Likros Kasan Likros Kala. So the Shulchan Aruch brings down the whole brisa. If they left Chaverim, they don't need a new bracha, and they don't have to bench, they don't need a new bracha. They didn't leave anybody. Then if they go out, they need a bracha, and when they come back, they need a bench. And similarly, if they're just eating or drinking like Paris, or they're just drinking something, also they need it. So the Beis Yosef already, I mean the Taz, they all ask, it's a kol, why even need a chen? It's a kol sheken. If you hold this way by pas, kol sheken, you hold this way by Paris or shtia. So it says the Kesef Mishnah asks this on the Rambam and tries to make say it's lav dafka. And so the Magen Ram says it's dochak. He says li nira kapashta. It's coming to say pashit asal hashmina and afilu shtia. It's coming to tell us, the Rambam is saying that even by drinking, by dvarim she'ein tunim im hinichu mikzasan ein tzarich bracha k'ma shekosov b'haga chamash v'kol haposkim k'risheshes shedin shtia v'achila shavin. The hills according to Risheshes, even according to Risheshes, you're passing it that way, then it's shavin that achila, there's no difference between achila and shtia. Mixes chaverim helps, and he wants to say that and that's the smak, and he's passing like the smak that mixes chaverim does help, even by Paris or shtia, and he brings a raya for carrot from the opposite raya from the Taz. He brings a raya that the Gemara was medayik. How is the Gemara medayik from the brisa that we know we're talking about dvar metuna bracha al chaverim koman? It said, since it says akru, that's how we know it's talking about dvar metunim. It's a diuk from akru. He says it's much better diuk. According to you, Beis Yosef, there's a much better diuk than from akru. Say a diuk than the fact that mixes chaverim works. It mixes chaverim works. You say it only works by dvar metuna bracha al chaverim koman. So why don't we do medayik from the fact that it says mixes chaverim works? That's a much better diuk from a lashon akru. You hold there's no such din of mixes chaverim by dvarim she'ein tuna bracha al chaverim koman. So of course we're talking about dvarim she'tuna bracha al chaverim koman. How could you mention mixes chaverim? Ella what? For sure the Gemara understands that mixes chaverim works even by dvarim she'ein tuna bracha al chaverim koman, even by Paris v'shtia, and therefore we have no diuk from there. The only diuk we could have is from lashon akru. So for carrot, it's a raya proof for carrot from the Taz. You want to bring a raya from it only said it by akru, and he is at raya for carrot. The Gemara wasn't only a dayak from akru, not from the etzem dins. We see the Gemara takes a double pashat that the din mixes chaverim works even by darmish into in the bracha l'kam a gavalig raya to the smak, and then even according to Risheshes, he wants to say it works to have mixes chaverim by Paris. Anyway, so it comes out then a major machlokas between the Magen Avram and the Taz and halacha l'maisa if mixes chaverim works for Paris and dvarim she'ein tunim. The Mishnah Berurah halacha l'maisa, he takes on Mishnah Berurah says, in Sifkat Yirches, on these words that the Magen Avram is dayak from, the chen im hayu mesubin lishtos alecha Paris. From there, the Magen Avram want to say the chiddush is that there also by Paris and shtia it works mixes chaverim. Mr. Ruh says, Ashminin, the Gambazeh Mahani, Hiniach Mrs. Chaverim, Kamo Basudas Pas. So Mr. Ruh just says in one line, the whole entire thing, summarizes the whole thing in one half a line, like the Magen Avram, that Mrs. Chaverim works by other things as well. And in the Sharat Tzion, Osiyah Daled, he says that it's based on the Magen Avram, Eli Rabbah, the Gra, other Achronim, Deloka Taz, not like the Raya of the Taz, but for Karet, a Raya against the Taz from Lashon and Gemara, like we just said. And then he says an incredible, beautiful diuk from a Rush, in Siman Chav Vav. Again, the Mishnah Berurah always says things, very bekitzer. You have to look into what he says in the Sharat Tzion. If I were writing in the Sharat Tzion, then I would have written out the whole thing and made it a whole big deal out of it. He just like Beremez just says, ten but Rush Siman Chav Vav in Arbi Psachim. So there, the Rush, if you're looking inside, the Rush, he says there that he's talking about the din of morer if you have to make a new bracha of Brit Adama on the morer. Here, a second. Oh. So the Rosh says, the question is that there's a Rashbam that says that the Gadata B'Halila is Hesek Hadas, like even though you already washed for the karpas, you have to still wash again for the matzah later on, because the Rashbam says that there's a Hesek Hadas between the Nefil Sedayim of karpas and the Nefil Sedayim of matzah later on. So if there's Hesek Hadas for that, then the Chor it's also Hesek Hadas for Brit Adama. You should make a new Brit Adama when you eat more, even though you already made Brit Adama on karpas. That's the shaila. So the Rosh says, "Nearly the lo kasha l'pirf Rashbam. The neida got it tabalila havi hesek hadas. Linya netila, even though it's hesek hadas, the halal hagara, the gavi netila sedayim. Hainu b'shum dilma asak daite v'naga b'moka mitzinofis the yadayim askaniyosein. You have over such a long time, you're involved in the gut and everything like that. So yadayim askaniyosein, we say the hands are always moving. So maybe you scratch places, that are not tahor or whatever. So you need to wash again inside Netilas Yadayim. So it's a special din in Netilas Yadayim, Heskadas. Aval inin achila, when it comes to eating, since you ate that, made a Brit Adama on the karpas, and you have the chazeres, you have the morer in front of you the whole time. You das is to eat it later on. Lav nimlachu, it's not considered nimlach, it's not hesek hadas to eat the morer afterwards. Ve'en kan lo hesek hadas lo shini mokom, it's not hesek hadas, it's not shini mokom. Sheitzarach levorach, it should necessitate a bracha. Sharei chaverim she'akru raglon leilach lebeis hakneses beis hamedrash. We find the din in the brisa in Kuf Beis, the second brisa of Rabbi Yehuda, the chaverim that akru ragleim to go to the Beis HaKnesses or Beis HaMedrash in the middle of the Suda, avabishi spadal of the shinim kamam, even though they davened or they did a shinim makom, iminichu shal mixas chaverim lo behesek hadas. If they left mixas chaverim, then there's no hesek hadas. So first of all, the Rush is already telling us the din mixas chaverim is midin hesek hadas. That's clear in the Rush. Number one, already geshmak. Kosher ken hacha kavachomer. In our case over here, you're sitting yourself at the seder. You're sitting in your place. Even though you're reading the Haggadah, that's no more hesek hadas than going to daven when you were oker makoma. So in other words, he's saying, so here there's a din, there's a kabel chomer from the din mixus chaverim. So now if you hold that mixus chaverim only works by pas or by dvarim tuna bracha lacharabim komam, then Rush has no words. My name is Smicha Sinai. There's no shaykhos over here because we're talking about Yerakos, talking about Brit Adama and Yerakos. The fact that the Rush brings in the din mixus chaverim, the gabe Yerakos, you see clearly that the Rush is telling us the din Mixes chaverim works by dvarim she'entu nebracha l'kam kaman. Araya to the Ramah, the Smak, the Magen Avram, the Mishnah Berurah, that we do say it even by dvarim she'entu nebracha l'kam kaman because it ensures that there's no hesach hadas like the Rosh says beferish. So like this rush is a checkmate for the Mishnah Berurah against the Taz.
Would it be different because you're sitting down to a Suda? At that point, you made a geffen, you did not make a motzi out of the motzi matzah, but you're still sitting in a Suda. So the Yerakos are indeed Yerakos, but it might be different because, I don't know, you're part of a full-fledged Suda, I mean, at least to some extent.
Well, you didn't wash yet. You're not part of it. There's no...
You didn't wash yet. You did make...
That's over the board.
Kiddush,
that's exactly the point. The point is that you're just in a Suda Yerakos that has no kniyus, and still the Mishnah Berurah is applying the svara of mixes chaverim to it. I mean, the Rush is applying the svara of mixes chaverim, which says no. If that's a din in Kriya Suda, there's no shaykos. The fact that you're sitting there, it's no shaykos to.
You made Kiddush already makes no difference.
No, because the Hagufa, the Kiddush has no shaykos to Yerakos either. Really, it's just Yerakos is like its own thing.
Right.
That's why you have to make a bracha on Manushach. That's why even though let's say you would have washed, you still would have needed a Berpi Adama because it's not really part of the Suda. It's just a separate din to eat Yerakos.
Right.
Right. So that rush is, like you need to like get up and dance for a few minutes. Just, after working on the sugya, at the end of the sugya to see that rush, it's like to get up and dance a little bit, sing a song. Okay. So now,
if Rebbe stops the recording for a minute, then we can.
No, it's part of the recording.
The people who are watching will feel bad that they didn't.
Let them feel bad. They should have been here. Okay. So now I want to say there's some very, very beautiful nafkaminas I think will come out from all this lumdus. Will be the subject in the poskim whether mixos chaverim works only if they ate with you, or even if they just sat with you but they didn't eat anything. What do you say about that?
Well, that has to do with Hesach Hadas. So then, as long as they're still there, I would say that that would keep your mind on the place that you're going back to. If it has to do with the continuation of the Suda, so they didn't eat with you, then they're not part of your Suda.
Oh, excellent. So now that's for sure the right lumdus, what you just said very well. The Ben Ish Chai, they bring down the Dirshu Bishop from the Ben Ish Chai that even if they were not eating with you, that's good enough. The medayik from the Mishnah Berurah and Sifkat and Aleph, Lashon Mishnah Berurah is Ha'ochel b'bayzeh, Ma'ir ba'ochel yechidi. You're talking about the whole situation is when you eat by yourself. When there's a hefsek. Im ochel b'yachad im od anoshim v'nisharu b'nei chaburasim koman ein tzarich laksu levarach kuli alman. If you're eating with other people, and some of them b'nei chaburaso, some of those that you're eating with stayed in the place, then you don't need to go back to make a new bracha. So the medayik from Lashon Mishnah Berurah is mashma that only if they're eating with you. So it's not the world's strongest diuk, but I hear the diuk. It's certainly it's welcome for a suffix. So the tzad that you need to be eating with you, it like you said, the lumdus very possibly could be totally in these two studim. We'll put it this way: if you hold that it's a din hesach hadas, then there's room to say like the Ben Ish Chai that lav dafka they're eating with you even if they were there. It's not muchach like the Ben Ish Chai either, because Chazal always say things with a certain shiur, with a certain. So it could be that Chazal only, since the regulus is that we're talking about people that are eating together, it could be that they only said the chiddush when they actually ate with you. So it's not muchach to say if you hold hesach hadas, it's not muchach that it'll work even if they weren't with you. But certainly only according to that side of hesach hadas is a room to say that lav dafka they ate with you. Because if it's a din in kviya suda, there's no room to say like that at all. You know that? It's not muchach to say it, but you could only say it if you hold that way.
There's no tzad. Everything is no tzad if you hold like Rav Sheshes and the din is in Akra Suda,
if the
If
shot,
they're not eating, then maybe, I mean, Misvara, I can hear that you could say such a thing. You could say that becomes part of your Suda, the fact of coming back to them. If they're waiting there for you to finish your Suda, maybe there is room to say that there's, you weren't Oker the Suda then.
it's a little schwer to hear because the shot is that the Suda is still going on. To say that they're waiting for you, that makes the Suda be going on. That's very hard to hear. Because they have no shakos to the Suda really. They have shakos to you as a Gavra, as your Das, but they really have no shakos to the Etzem the Suda.
They came, they're sitting by your Suda, you're eating a Suda. You
Right.
have to get up and leave. Why are they staying there?
They stay there because for whatever reason they're there. That's enough for you not to be Mesiach Das from them. However, if the shot is that you need that the Suda is still going on, so the fact that they're sitting there, it's very hard to hear that the Suda is still going on if they're not eating that Suda. It's very schwer to hear that. It's in my mind, it's very schwer to hear. Now, just one caveat to that diuk, to that what they're saying over here is that the Mishnah Berurah might truly be a diuk, a true diuk, like that. You need to be eating that way, but perhaps that it's only being said a little bit of Risheshus, because that Mishnah Berurah is going on the Dasa Shulchan Aruch that's passing like Risheshus that the Suda. Sheshus is for sure holding that there's an Akira as a Suda, because Sheshus holds that this din applies even by Dvar Matuna Brachal Rabbu Kaman. Like we said, we're Oker the Suda. Like the Ramah said, that the Dasa Shulchan Aruch is that when you get up, you're Oker the Suda. So maybe that's why the Mishnah Berurah is Medayik in his Lashon to say that if it's only Hinich mixes Chaverim, they're eating with you, there's an Akira Suda. Mashen can, according to the Ramah, it's all done in Hesach Hadas. Perhaps the Mishnah Berurah would agree with Ben Ish Chai that even if they didn't eat with you, it will work inside Hesach Hadas. So the whole diuk in the Mishnah Berurah might be a true diuk, but only a libid of Risheshus, a libid of the Das Shulchan Aruch, not a libid the way we actually paskin. Then there's still room to say that that even if they weren't eating this good enough. There's another shaila. There's another suffix in the Achronim that if you walked away, the hiniach katan, you left katan in there. So they bring down from some poskim that it's totally in whether or not they're old enough to they bring up shame. I think from Sian Abashal or something. I forgot who. One of the Sephardi poskim that it's only if they're at least 6 years old that they're old enough to bench to do mitzaref to zimun. The Sephardim that are mitzaref katanim sometimes the zimun. Which would be someone the day of the Zama, which would be like a ben sheish. So I think also whether it's I think it's Ben Sina Bashol says this. So I think this also is going to be going back to the same shiloh that if you're holding like the Ben Ish Chai, that even if they didn't eat anything, so the fact that you left Tanim there, then you need to go back to them. Then if you're not Mesiach Das by Gedolim, Kolshken, you're not Mesiach Das by Tanim, you need to go back to. So even if they didn't eat anything, or if they ate, it's inconsequential if they could bench or not, because you don't really need them have a shaykhus to the Suda. If you need a shaykhus to the Suda, then you can start saying shiurim. You need maybe he's old enough to bench to start the zimun, whatever, because you need a kviya Suda. But if it's just a din hesach hadas that you're not mesiach das, then it shouldn't matter how old they are. Also, there's a second. Okay, yeah. Okay, going. Another nafkamina. Oh yeah, there's a shal in Rabbi Kveger. If it's mavur in the poskim that if let's say you ate dvar mituna bracha, you ate pas dvar mitunin, but you ate pachos mikazayas, then you walked away. So then, even according to Reb Chisda, the din of dvar mituna bracha lercha makoimim is only if it's tone of bracha lercha makoimim. If you're chayav in a bracha achroina, and that bracha achroina has to be makomai. If you eat less than a kazayas, even though it's pas, since you're not chayav in a bracha achroina, So then it's like Paris. It doesn't matter. But the Shiloh will be, and this is the Achronim speak about, according to that, based on that Rebbe Kveger, what if you ate pachas mikazayas but you left mixas chaverim there? Okay, so now what's the din? Will it work even by pachas mikazayas? Or do you need that? It has to at least been a kazayas, a shiur chashuv, you're chayav to bench, only then mixas chaverim works. So, yeah, what do you say?
What is considered a tzia suda? Can be kovea suda on less than a kazayas, or it can't be?
Well, everyone agrees that it's not a suda yet until you like ein achil b'chus kazayas. So you started eating, but it's not a chiluk hashuva yet until when it's pachas kazayas.
Or if you were planning on eating more than a kazayas, you wouldn't have to make another bracha now if you ate more.
Well, that would be the shiloh. If you walked away now and you come back, let's say you ate pachas kazayas and there's nobody there, you walk away. You come back, you need a new bracha. It doesn't help the fact that you ate, the Ramah would agree, that Rebbe Kveger says clearly that the Ramah would agree that there's no chaverim there. You ate less than a kazayas, you walked away. The fact that you want to eat more doesn't help, doesn't make a difference. You still, right now it's dvarim she'ein tunim. What you did eat is dvarim she'ein tunim bracha because you didn't, it's not ton bracha at all. It's not ton bracha lachreim at all. Because we eat less than a shear that's ton bracha.
Why is it a difference? If a person ate a piece of challah less than a kazayas, and he didn't leave, you can still eat more.
Yeah, because you didn't leave yet.
Eat another half of kazayas.
And Taka the Mishnah Berurah says that somebody should be very careful. Let's say a lot of times you see, like, you make a motzi and you pass out the challah and your wife takes a bite, and as she's chewing the first bite, she runs into the kitchen to take care of something. Mishnah Berurah says one should be careful not to do that, because
in case all the kids get up and you get up also.
No, because you're already been mishana makom before you really had a kliyus.
Because then you were not leaving him over the table.
No, you have a shunin makom. You have a shunin makom going on already before you had a kazayas, before you already had a kliyasuda. So he says lachatchila one should be careful about that. So then in the Sharat Tzion he explains, why did I say only chatchila, not an ikar din? Because since I proved in the Bir Halacha, which we talked about a couple of shiurim ago, that big huge Bir Halacha in Kufayin Ches that explained that according to many Rishonim, there is no shunin makom by pas in the same house under the same roof, which is totally in the machlokas whether kiddush and brachos have the same din or they're a different din. Shunin makom is the same, and even mecheder lecheder or not. So since that's totally in the machlokas, I can't say b'diavad you have to make a new bracha if you did that. But chatchila certainly be careful for the other Rishonim. There is shunin makom, even makom lemakom in the same bais. So one should be careful not to do that, because if you had less than a shear, then there's no kriyas. Then it might be shunim makom in a way there's no tikkun according to those Rishonim. So that's a cheshbon in the Mishnah Berurah going on. So here
I'm confused about we're talking about in this situation. We just, in the case before, we said that there's a katan who's in the meal, and if you're talking about that he has to be starved in the suda or not, that goes into the shiloh. But over here, nobody is making a mezuzah together because it's only main shalosh. So, Mike, I don't understand why
what do you mean main shalosh?
You said you ate a piece of whatever it was. Let's say you ate a mizonos. No, are you talking about that too or no?
Well, we're talking about less than a kazayas. So less
than a kazayas of what?
Of anything. No pas. We're talking about pas. But there's no chiyuv bracha achrona yet. So now, it's not called dvarim hatunin bracha la'achreim mumkomam, because it's not ton bracha la'achreim at all at this point. So that Rebbe Kveger says it's like Paris. For sure, everyone agrees that that's considered shunim makom, and if you come back, you need a new bracha.
Right. Okay. Well, let's say it's mizonos.
Same thing. So if less than a kazayas mizonos, same thing. We're talking about less than a kazayas. So now the shiloh will be that same less than a kazayas that is considered hesach hadas l'kuli alma. Would it help to have mixas chaverim there for that, to say that it wouldn't be hesach hadas? So now it's totally in this chakira. If you say that mixas chaverim works to continue the suda, so that's only once there's a chalosh shem suda, there's at least a kazayas has a shame suda, then it can be mamshech it. But if there's no suda at all, then there's no hemshech. Then there's nothing, no suda to be mamshech. Mashein can if it's within hesach hadas. So maybe even though there's no shame suda yet, but perhaps if it works for Paris, maybe it'll work for this as well. And in fact, they bring down, I didn't say inside, but they bring down from the Ben Ish Chai that he holds that it works for that as well. So Ben Ish Chai l'shitaso that holds that even if they didn't eat, if the chaverim didn't eat anything, they're considered mixus chaverim. So the same Ben Ish Chai holds that even if you didn't eat a whole suda, but you have a chaverim there, so then also it works because there's no hesach hadas. So really, so this din will be totally in these two studim as well.
Well, why is it a problem then? The Rabbi mentioned that the Mishnah Berurah said that you shouldn't walk away before you eat a kazayas. So then this should make it like what we needed because you can't have shina makom in the same bias, but it shouldn't matter. There are still people by the table. You can sit back down and finish that kazayas. You don't have the hesach hadas.
Well, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't qualify when he says that the chatchila, whether the other people at the table or not. He just says it's done. So I'm not really sure. You're raising a good point. I'm not really sure if the Mishnah Berurah holds that he's only saying it by a case where there's nobody else there, and then if there were people there, he wouldn't think it's a problem. Or maybe he holds like the other poskim, the Cholach and the Ben Ish Chai, that mixed chaverim only works by once you ate a kazayas.
Why would he hold like that if that's
because the Mishnah Berurah does say I was bothered by a lashon in the Mishnah Berurah, and at first I thought it maybe was lav dafka, but then I thought afterwards it must be dafka. He says in Sifkat and Chav Zayin, the Mishnah Berurah says that by Heniach says the Kevin Shanishar will mixasan Vafilu Echa Bimkomo. Mixasan means even one person, it's enough. He says a couple times. So he says a lot. Here's Lashon Mishnah Berurah, which bothered me a lot. But then I thought, he says, "Came in the Shinishra Mitzasan Vafilu Echa Bimkomo Lo Nifsaka Hasuda." So he says very strong lashon. Then the suda is not nifsak. Now it bothered me. I thought first he has to say it's lav dafka because he's talking in the Shitas Ramah that's all totally in hesach hadas. But he uses a lashon lo nifsaka hasuda. Then v'chozrim le'echol lishtos blishum bracha. So the fact that the Mishnah Berurah says you need a svara of lo nifsaka hasuda. So first of all, I understand why he says you have to be careful not to walk away before you eat a kazayas. There is no suda yet until you eat a kazayas. But how does that fit with the whole lamdas the Mishnah Berurah is learning that it's inside hesach hadas? So you have to say.
Isn't that Rabbi said the rush from last?
Very good. So how does the rush itself fit in with this whole thing? The rush is going with Rechista, which is going into this whole hesach hadas for, and he's the one who says that it has to be kilu. You're still b'mkomo, since you're moving to bench. You're still b'mkomo. The rush. So how do those two things fit together? Based on that rush, the last year we came to a maskana, which I think now is a wrong maskana, that it has to be that it's mamish the same. He learns that the sfor is hemshak suda mamish, but we're learning that the sfor is now hesach hadas, not that, according to their ma at least. So I think you have to say that the svora of hesach hadas is totally in the fact that there is a suda over here that not mitzad the chefs of the suda, but mitzad the gavra that you have to go back to that suda. Then you need that it's lo nitzaka suda mitzad the dasa gavra, and therefore it's only going to be when there is a suda, when there's a kviya suda, which will be why the Mishnah Berurah is worried about eating less than a kazayas. So there's a sort of a haircut. We have we have to be a tziruf of two sforas in Mishnah Berurah, two things going on in order to make this.
How do I read the end of that Mishnah Berurah? Because I think that might help.
Pardon?
I think at the end of that Mishnah Berurah might help what Rabbi is saying also. I mean, it should help. Because it says,
right, as long as you ate I guess you ate a shear or whatever, then
because you have to apply that svara of hesach hadas, mitam Oker Suda, you have to apply it to Paris also. If it's Dvarim She'enon Tuna Bracha L'Makamam.
Right, and absolutely.
So he's saying that even though we're saying it's in Hesach Hadas, the Hesach Hadas has to do with some kind of Kviyas that was created.
Exactly. You see that a couple of times in the Mishnah Berurah. There was another place as well. Let's see where it was. Another. So where it was. There's another Mishnah Berurah I can't find it right now.
But Rabbi, even if we go back to that question of eating less than the kazayas, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can still say that though. You can still say that there is that kviyas suda, and in terms of the hesach hadas, there is a kviyas suda.
Well, there's rules. Kviyas suda. It's very hard to hear that the words kviyas suda when you didn't even have a real achila yet. It's not considered a Suda is there has to be something there. There has to at least like in achila b'chus b'gazayis. So there's no chashivas to that achila until you get to a gazayis. The question is, do you need that chashivas achila? Do you need a shem suda to have this or not?
Well, you're eating it l'shem suda. You're going to eat more probably.
Right, but when you walked out, since into the bracha lachem come on, then it's worse than Paris. It's ein tuna.
Overthinking it.
The point is that there is something tying you back to the place that you were at to make your bracha achrona. And until you have a kazayas, you actually don't have to make a bracha achrona.
Right. Because only then can you say that there's something that tying you to it, and therefore you're not mesiach das. So the bottom line is not that there's a suda there, but there's a reason for you not to mesiach das.
Right.
That'll be so we're a little bit we're a little bit redefining the two studim. Okay. Now, and a couple more nakudas. Oh wow, it's already late. Let's try to quickly just throw out a couple more nafkaminas. The Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Lamed Aleph says that this din that he holds, the mixes chaverim works even for Paris, like the Magen Avram. So Sifkat and Lamed Aleph, he says also in the name of the Magen Avram that when is that so? That's only when you actually do go back to your place. By Paris. If you don't go back to the same place, so even though we say by pas, if you continue eating somewhere else, the chiyuv to go back, it keeps you like tied to the first place inside your das. That even if you eat somewhere else, you don't need a new bracha. But Paris, that's not the case. Even if mixas chaverim works for Paris, which he does paskin that way, that's only if you go back where the chaverim are. But if you eat somewhere else, not where the chaverim are, then you do need a new bracha. So we see that there's a chiluk between mixas chaverim and dvar mitzvah bracha and makomim. Chaverim doesn't actually mamish create a matzah of dvar mitzvah bracha and makomim. Just chaverim creates a matzah of no hesach hadas when you go back where the chaverim are. So that's an important distinction that which fits into what we're saying that the svara of the rush, since we're still working with the rush that says that by dvar mitzunin, it makes it ki'ilu b'mkomo dami, as if you're still, since you're tied there, it's still if you're still there. So if you eat somewhere else, then it's considered a hemshach of the same suda. Mashen ken by dvar mitzunin, even though mixes chaverim helps, it doesn't tie you back to it in the way that you're mechuyev to go back. It doesn't make it turn intunim into being dvar mitunim. It just means that if you do go back, there's no hesach hadas.
I thought that the discussion was even if shinei makom and you're not choser to the same place. If you're shinei makom and then now you're in a different place, we're saying that the only time that it helps you, that you wouldn't have to make a new bracha, is if you go back to the original place.
By Paris, by Paris with mixes chaverim.
By Paris. Okay.
By Paris, if mixes chaverim helps, it helps only when you go back to that place.
Okay.
So that's going to be it's a fascinating distinction between that and dvar mitunin bracha that works even for other places. So we're saying it helps But then Hesach Hadas it creates a matzav of there's no Hesach Hadas, but does not recreate, doesn't turn the paras into Dvar Mitzunim that keeps you tied to it, like the Rosh said, that you're Kilim and Komadam. So that's very chashuv distinction of the Mishnah Berurah.
It's a little confusing in terms of what Hesach Hadas is. Like makes Hesach Hadas into like this lumdish entity. Like it's only Lagabe, when you go back, then there's no Hesach Hadas. And if you're somewhere else, there is that like.
Yeah, because
it means that the Hesach Hadas doesn't mean like there's a conscious thinking about, the whole time about what you're eating.
Well, because when you go back there, then you're showing that it's like your meisim are mitzaref to your das to show that you really weren't mesiach das from waiting over there. But if I left completely, which the stam akira, stam halicha isn't akira from what you're reading, unless when it's dvarim she'ein tunim. So there's nothing tying you to back there. So now if you eat somewhere else, then your ma'isa is showing that what your legs, it's like like you voted with your feet.
What does that mean? That means if I go somewhere else and I eat, I'm eating an apple, and then I go somewhere else and I eat, take another bite from that apple, and then I come back again. So what's the status of the middle bite?
Well, the middle bite needed a bracha. And
what about the new place? That when I come back, is that like a Hesach Hadas from the original place because I went and ate somewhere else?
I would say so.
I
would say so. You probably need a third bracha now.
That is what okay. So then it's not as lumdish as I thought.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, another nafkamina, we'll try to knock off a couple quick things, that the Ramah holds that the Ramah writes at the end that even though if you do leave and you come back, you don't need a new bracha. L'chatchila, you shouldn't leave until you bench, because we say that it's a suggestion because you might forget. You might that's it's not a takana, it's not a real hesach hadas, but it's a suggestion, or it's a strong suggestion, a recommendation. You might forget. So Rav Sheinberg is brought down from Rav Sheinberg that since the whole reason of it is not a takana, it's not a real hesach hadas, it's a strong suggestion, you might forget, then a shomer will help for that. If you set up a shomer, don't forget, we have to go back to finish eating over there, and you want to go back to where you were, even by, let's say, by Paris. So then, by a Suda, not by Paris, by a Suda that you're not supposed to walk out, you might forget. It helps to have a shomer, or you can set an alarm clock on your watch, or set up an alarm on your phone to remind you. So then, because it's not a din be'etzem that it's hesach hadas, it's just a chash.
So the only problem with that is that what we're nervous about is that you will have become hungry again, right. And that there's no set amount of time for.
No, there is 72 minutes. In the Sudas Pas, we say 72 minutes. So
even if you leave, 72 minutes you're sitting there.
Yeah. Leaving has no shaykhs to how hungry you are. It's just
across the board. Right. No, the way that the lashon was that we're in Eitz Tova, because maybe you'll be hungry again. Right?
Yeah. So if you said it in a shiur that you don't have a shiur, of azal siyasa, which they by a kazai 72 minutes, was the shot exactly how long it is, but whatever that shiur is, you said it from before.
You go by time now. You don't go based on like a feeling. Like if you feel.
Yeah, there's a shala if you have the feeling, but the time. What's the din? Is it still rabbanon deraisa? Whatever. That's all shala, those brachos. But ma'isa, for whatever that shiur is, if you set it, make a shomer, or you set an alarm, it'll still work. He just recommends labeling the alarm to see eating. I shouldn't forget what the alarm is for. There's another nafkamina like that. This would not work if you hold that it's an akira, it's a suda. It's not about remembering. It's about an akira. It's about real hesach hadas. Also, there's another Mishnah Berurah that says that in Mishnah Berurah and Lama Gimel, it's a very important nafkamina l'maisa that the way we paskin that by dvar mituna bracha lachem mukoman, that if you continue eating somewhere else, then you don't need a new bracha. But chatchila you can't go out. But the Mishnah Berurah says that if you have das b'shas hamotzi, that I'm going to start eating here, and I'm going to finish my suda somewhere else, then you're allowed to go even l'chatchila. Since you did it b'shas hamotzi, no chash and forgetting, because that was your plan. And it's all one big suda, starting here and ending over there. That would not work according to the Shulchan Aruch, where it's an akira, but according to the Ramah, that eating somewhere else is not an akira by Dvar Mitunim, then I could add that das Latchila. And in fact, the Shevi Levi brings this down, but I heard it also from my Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Sainberg, that's all. We would go to eat by Shal Shudas by him and then finish. There was a minute Chasidim, start to wash and eat the Suda Shal Shudas at home, and then we all go to the Tish, eat some pas with the Rebbe and go to the Tish and then bench over there and then Daven Marav. So since the das is b'shas and Sadayim to Motzi to finish by the Tish, then that's mutal chatchila even according to the Ramah. Even though we're not pushing or going to forget anything because that was your plan, so that's considered one suda mamash. That's a minig of many chasidim to do that. One last thing. The Mishnah Berurah says a kula in Sifkat Lamed Hey that since the whole thing over here of leaving in the Ramal the Chatchila shouldn't do it is only because of a shash, you might forget. So that's only going to be if you're going far enough away or long enough away that there is a shash that might happen. You might forget and go too long without benching and lose the whole benching. But if you know you're just walking out the door for a minute to talk to somebody for a few minutes or whatever, and you know you're coming right back, so then even that's not even b'chlal chatchila of the he says it's the name of Rabbi Kiveger. It's a big kula, but even the Ramah will hold it. Lo in yachnisus chaver, it's all by yourself. You wash, you're in the middle of eating, and then your friend calls you and says, "I need to speak to you for a few minutes. I have a quick shaila. You know, it happens all the time. I knock on the door. They want to ask a shaila that needs going outside to the sunlight, whatever, and seeing something. So I know I'm not hanging out there for long. I'm coming right back. So then there's no, even the Ramah will hold that you're allowed to do that al-chatchila. Since we hold that it's not hezek hadas, it's not a akira samakam it's not an akira by Dvarim Tuna Brachal Makamam, then there's no chashash hiflig because you're just going out for a few minutes. Then that's what are even chatchila according to the Ramah.
Isn't that going against the Mechaber or no?
Mechaber no. Mechaber holds the minute you walk out the door, then you have to bench.
I don't know. So who is this according to?
According to the Ramah.
Oh, okay.
But this will work for Ashkenaz, not for Sephardim. It won't work.
Yeah.
All these kulas I'm saying, they're all kulas for the Ashkenaz, not for the Sephardim, because the Sephardim will hold them like the Shulchan Aruch. Then all these kulas don't apply. Okay. So what started as seemed like a side din, whether this works with Paris or not, mixed chaver, and really that got us down to the crux of the whole sugya, what the whole sugya is all about. Okay.
Right,
Have a great Shabbos.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.
Also.